Hollywood celebrates its stars, the actors on screen, the directors on stage, the awards, the fame, the red carpets. But in the shadows, behind the glitz and the glamour, there exists a rare kind of partnership. A partnership that never seeks the spotlight, yet shapes the very stories millions fall in love with. Their fingerprints are on iconic scenes, legendary lines, and unforgettable moments, yet most people will never hear their names. Today, we're going behind the curtain to uncover Hollywood's most unsung duo. Two minds whose collaborative genius quietly shaped decades of film and television, changed production standards, and influenced the industry more than the celebrities who took the bow. This is the story of the partnership that built worlds, elevated scripts, and defined the emotional DNA of modern storytelling, all while staying almost completely invisible. The power of a hidden partnership. Every era of Hollywood has a signature duo. The names everyone knows: Scorsese and De Niro, Nolan and Zimmer, Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson. But this duo, this pair of collaborators, didn't build their reputation through fame. They built it through reliability, intuition, and a kind of silent brilliance that made other creators better. Individually, they were talented. Together, they were unstoppable. One was the architect, the structural thinker, the person who could take a chaotic idea and weave it into a compelling narrative spine. The other was the refinisher, the emotional sculptor, the eye for nuance, the one who could sense when a scene didn't breathe or when a character needed a moment of stillness to feel real. Side by side, these two shaped characters who became household names. They polished scenes that shaped culture. They improved scripts that went on to win awards. They built atmospheres that stayed with audiences for decades. Yet their contribution was always uncredited, understated, and hidden in the margins. They weren't the faces on posters. They were the spirits in the room, when Hollywood needed them most. Their partnership began during a transitional era, a time when Hollywood was struggling between old-school studio control and new-wave creative freedom. Movies were getting bigger, shows were getting bolder, and streaming would soon rewrite the rules. But in that chaotic space, something was missing: cohesion. Scripts were rushed, studios demanded rewrites, directors needed support, actors needed clarity, and the industry needed people who could step in quietly and elevate everything without ego, attention, or praise. Enter Hollywood's most unsung duo. They thrived in chaos. They listened more than they spoke, and they had a rare ability to identify the heartbeat of a story, even when the creators themselves couldn't articulate it. They saved productions from collapsing. They transformed near-flops into hits, and yet their names rarely made it into interviews, commentaries, or headlines. Their influence on iconic films. You've seen their work without knowing it. The tight, unforgettable dialogue in that cult classic drama. They rewrote it at 2 a.m. The emotional arc in that blockbuster superhero film that made audiences cry. They shaped it quietly in a studio office no one remembers walking into. The tension-filled final act of that award-winning thriller. They reconstructed it from scratch when the original script fell apart during filming. Directors came to rely on them. Producers trusted them. Actors respected them because they often rewrote scenes to fit the performer's voice, preserving authenticity without ever asking for recognition. They didn't chase the credit, they chased the craft. And that is why their influence became legendary within the industry, even if the wider world never saw it. Television's secret weapon. While Hollywood often steals the spotlight, television is where this duo performed some of their most impressive work. They stepped in during the early 2000s when TV was transforming from simple episodic storytelling into deeper, more serialized narratives. Shows demanded continuity, thematic consistency, and emotional stakes that built across seasons rather than episodes. Without them, many beloved shows would have lost their flow. They strengthened character arcs that felt flat. They fixed pacing issues that threatened entire seasons. They reorganized storylines to build tension without confusing audiences. And most importantly, they added heart. This duo understood something many writers overlooked. Audiences don't fall in love with plots, they fall in love with people. They helped writers and showrunners discover the emotional center of their characters, creating protagonists who were layered, flawed, and deeply human. That's why so many unforgettable series from the golden age of TV feel so cohesive. This duo was there, stitching scenes together and giving characters souls. The art of being invisible. What makes their story so fascinating is not just their impact, it's their approach. They never sought fame. They never demanded front-page credit. They weren't driven by ego, but by the work itself. They understood something few in Hollywood accept easily. When you're truly great at what you do behind the scenes, the world may never know, but the art will. Their influence shows up in moments. A lingering silence between two characters that suddenly feels profound. A monologue rewritten to hit with emotional weight. A plot twist that lands perfectly because everything builds up to it organically. A season finale that sticks the landing instead of falling apart. Every time a viewer watched a scene and thought, wow, that felt real, chances are they were responsible. Their invisibility became their superpower, allowing them to elevate the story without distracting from it. How they quietly changed the industry. Once their work became known within the inner circles of Hollywood, they became one of the most in-demand duos in the business. Studios called them to save movies already deep into production. Writers brought them in as script surgeons, trusting them to fix what wasn't working. Directors used them as creative sounding boards. Actors requested them personally for script reviews. But their true contribution was bigger than individual scenes or projects. They helped normalize a culture where collaboration wasn't just expected, it was respected. They proved that creativity is not a solo endeavor. Behind every moment of brilliance is a network of minds, each adding details that shape the final masterpiece. In many ways, they shifted Hollywood away from the myth of the lone genius and toward a more honest view of storytelling, a collective craft built by many hands. Why they remain unsung. Hollywood rewards visibility, fame, a face attached to a product, a name attached to a poster. This duo didn't fit that mold. They weren't chasing the spotlight. They were protecting the art. They avoided interviews. They rejected vanity credits. They preferred quiet rooms, late-night brainstorming sessions, and the invisible satisfaction of watching their work succeed without their name attached to it. In an industry obsessed with recognition, they became a reminder that impact doesn't require applause. They weren't unsung because they lacked greatness. They were unsung because they valued creation over celebration. Hollywood loves its stars, but the real magic often comes from the people no one sees. The quiet collaborators, the idea shapers, the creative anchors who hold everything together while the cameras roll and the world watches. Hollywood's most unsung duo didn't chase fame. They created it for others. They didn't seek recognition. They built legacies from behind the curtain. Their contributions shaped iconic films, defined generations of television, and elevated storytelling itself. And though their names may never be widely known, their impact will be felt for decades. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like and subscribe for more cinematic stories and hidden Hollywood legends.